Erik Semling, the youngest guest in the history of the Running Effect podcast. I'm not sure you'll ever be beat. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing this evening?
Good. How about you?
Doing really good, man. Let's go back in time to this past October. You actually DM'd me on Instagram and you said, remember my name. You'll hear it in a
Yeah.
few years. It only took
Yeah,
a
I
few
did.
months. Where did that DM come from?
I thought it would be cool because I actually thought about this moment that it would happen, that when I was on your podcast that you would say this. So I thought that would be really cool. And then I wanted to be on your podcast. So because I'd listened to you and Simeon and Connor, I thought that was the call room. That was a really good one. And I thought it was really cool and insightful listening to that.
So crazy. For you, when did you first feel like you started to get some more attention on your own personal running?
I would say when I started uploading on Instagram, then people started to notice me more, not only on Instagram, but when I would go to a meet, people would, notice me, and it wouldn't just be like the people I knew or my family or friends or the people at my meets that had seen me before. It would be people that I'd never even met or had any relation to. So
For you, where did that decision come from to start posting on Instagram? I'm sure you've followed a lot of different running people
yeah.
throughout the years. For you, when did you feel like I'm going to start personally posting my journey and career on here?
Yeah, it was in the fall for cross country because I was doing really well, and I was like, well, I want to upload this because I think it could, do well, and I wanted to give glory to God and just show him, glorify Him through Instagram. So I thought that would be a good idea. So, and I realized that I also need it for when I, get older, and it's kind of like hopefully my job. Then you need an influence to influence people and sell shoes and to make a living basically.
Was it difficult at first, like the transition to getting on? I remember for me, when I first started posting, I was way more sensitive to comments than I am now. Like, I feel like when you first get started, it's a bit of like a bumpy road to get to where you are
Yeah.
today. What was that like for you when you first got on the platform?
Yeah, it was. I got some negative comments like my form is terrible, and I'll be honest, it wasn't great in the fall, but it's definitely gotten better. But or just negative comments in general, and I didn't think too much of them, but now I barely even think about them. I just think they're kind of funny. So
Right. Talking about the negative comments thing, like I know you kind of just answered that, but diving deeper
yeah,
into that, I've personally seen them on your videos. I can't
yeah.
imagine saying those to anyone, much less an eighth grader. Is it difficult, like seeing those as someone who's so young and has such high ambitions in the sport? Like people say, you do too much, you train too much, your form sucks. Like how do you handle those comments? Do you ever talk to your parents about them? Do you feel like you're the type of kid, it seems like this, where you're just like, I'm just gonna keep doing my thing, keep running. I
Yeah,
don't
I
care.
just kind of, yeah. I mean, I tell my parents if I think they're funny or something, but I'm not bothered by them, and they give me motivation when I don't want to do a workout, and I'm like, oh, I gotta prove these people wrong. They're telling me that I'm not gonna do it, or I'm not in high school. I'm gonna be burnt out. I'm not gonna be burnt out, so just gonna tell them that. So
What was the conversation with your parents like when you said, I'm gonna get on Instagram, I'm gonna start posting? What's that kind of been like to for them to see your personal growth? I mean, you're 10,000 followers as an eighth grader. Like
yeah,
it's so crazy.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I didn't really talk about it much. I mean, they knew, but it wasn't like a big deal. But I mean, it was right when I got a collab post with the Running Peak, and then I was at, I think, 4,000 followers or so, and just within a few weeks, in the past, I think month or so, I've gained 6,000, 7,000 followers, and that's really what got me going and got me improving. And yeah, I mean, it's not too much of a transition because I only make 15-second videos, so it's not too hard to do. I mean, it takes, I've spent 30, 40 minutes on it, but it's not too much of a time taker. So
Historically, I think we've seen older people in the running space create accounts, create content. I feel like you kind of signal a shift of people who are creating content at a younger age as their careers are starting. I do feel like even on my like Instagram Reels page, I come across like a new middle schooler talking about like
yeah,
training for their state meet or running a
yeah.
specific time. Why do you think more young people are starting to create content and post on the platform?
I think it's a lot easier to upload. Like if what's that editing system called? It makes it, I don't wait, CapCut. Yeah, it makes it really easy to make really cool edited videos. and it's so easy to make a video that it's like anybody can do it, and there's a lot of talented people, so they want to post their journey, and it's impressive for people because a lot of people can shoot a basketball or throw a football, but to be able to do really hard running workouts and post them and show the general public, it's like I can't understand what a basketball player does, but everybody can understand you running a 12-mile run. I mean, that's to the general public pretty impressive. So it's easy to impress people, and it's easy to upload. So yeah.
I know a lot of eighth graders are the type who seek advice from other people and will DM bigger accounts. I wouldn't be surprised if you've done it yourself, like DMing professional runners, collegiate runners, all of that stuff. Have you personally experienced people reaching out to you for advice? And do you ever find it funny to think, I'm in eighth grade, it's funny I'm giving, these people advice?
Yeah, I've had some people reach out to me. I mean, not too many, but there's a decent amount of people who reach out to me and ask me for tips. And I mean, it makes sense because I mean I am pretty fast, so I mean it makes sense. But I would expect them more to go to older people. But I mean, yeah, it makes sense the amount of people I get. It's not too many, but yeah.
You told me before we started this conversation, 11 days left. 11 days left in your middle school career. Career is not the right word, I guess. Middle school.
Yeah.
I've never had a middle schooler on the podcast before. I want to hear, what's it like being a middle schooler in 2024?
It's boring but fun at the same time because you have your friends, and I personally would rather, it's more fun to be in the summer. You can focus on your training, you can do a lot more fun things, and you don't have to focus on the school, which has gotten more and more of a disruption as training gets, more intense. Obviously, when you're running a lot less, when you're when you're 8 years old, you don't really even think about it. But when, you can stay home and rest your legs and, go get a massage and go in the hot tub to get your muscles ready. It's a lot more efficient. I've noticed like on the weekends I recover faster because I can focus on my recovery a lot better. So I look at it as more of a stumbling block between my training. So I'm excited for the summer.
Are you excited for high school? I know you ran your high school cross country state meet. You placed sixth there as an eighth grader. What's kind of your thought on entering into high school, not just from like an athletic perspective, but also from an academic perspective, making that jump?
Yeah, I'm excited to do it because, now it's not just like I'm an eighth grader, but now that my body's been, developing enough to the point where I'm not just good for my age now, I'm actually good to race people that are, nationally good. They're not just like, oh, I'm racing, another 14-year-old who's good. It's like, no, I can race actual high schoolers. And now that I'm in high school and I've developed enough and I've trained enough, now it's getting to the point where it's, I can beat these people and at least compete against them. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and yeah.
Erik, take me back in time to young Erik. How did you first get your start in the sport of running, and what were your first impressions of it?
So it started on this day in the summer, and we were going out for a walk, and we decided to run. Well, it was actually the first 2 days we went for walks because we thought it was like a nice day in the summer. So it was like, oh, we're just gonna go for a walk. And then the third day, we did like a little run, like maybe 5 minutes or something really short. And then over the next month after that, we did like 5 minutes, walk a minute, 5 minutes, walk a minute. And I'll tell you, I hated running. I absolutely hated running. I thought it was the most painful thing. I don't even remember like feeling, like that feeling when you have a good workout. I don't even remember feeling good after it because we'd run like 10:30 pace, and the problem was really my mind. It was like if I went back into my body, then it probably wasn't that bad, and I probably could have run a decent pace and run 30 minutes without stopping, and it wouldn't have been that bad. But I mean, it was all a mental thing, and I've noticed my mentality has gotten a lot better over the past 5-6 years. I was 8 years old when I started, and then I went kind of off and on until I got serious when I was 10. But yeah, when I was 8, we started, and I hated it. And then slowly, as I got better, then I started to like it more. And I mean, nobody likes running the first few weeks because it's so hard and it sucks. But then as soon as you get good and it's like, oh, I can run 5 miles and it's not even that bad. It's like, oh, now all of a sudden it's fun. So.
Looking back, is there a specific moment you can recollect on where you thought running is actually fun? This is something I want to explore and pursue.
It wasn't maybe a specific moment, but it was over a season. So it was right during COVID. I was taking a break from running from about February to probably July. So I took a break and I didn't run. I just did like elliptical, and it was during COVID. And then in the summer, my dad's like, well, you should probably start, if you want to start running, if you want to do well in cross country, you should start running now because you're not going to do well if you start in August. So I started running and I ran, not too much, but I ran and I got decently consistent. And then by the end of the season, I was doing pretty well and better than ever. I ran 20:56 in fifth grade, which shows my improvement. In sixth grade, then I ran 18:10, and that is like road times. So, I mean, not cross country is obviously much harder. But it was in sixth grade where I decided, I think, that I was going to be good. And it was, I first said to my dad, like, I'm going to break 4:10 in the mile. That's my goal. And I thought that was, a big goal. And then I'm like, I'm going to break 4 minutes in the mile someday. And that was like the winter of 2022. And if you look at, I sent you earlier, I won nationals actually for indoor track in the 3K. And that was the season where I realized I was good. And it was really exciting for me because I didn't even think I had a chance. And we didn't even know there was a national meet till November of 2021. And then by early 22, I was already winning nationals. So it was really fun. And yeah, it was kind of the indoor track season of 2022 was where I decided that I was going to get very serious. Not just, I'm going to be good at state. I'm going to be good at nationals in the world and whatever. So.
For you, how much of your training back then or even present day comes from a coach versus you going out on the internet or listening to podcasts, exploring and figuring out what you think will make you good and then doing that? And what has kind of the training progression looked like over the years?
Yeah, so in about, when we started out, it was just like my dad just saying, like, all right, we're just going to try to, build up to like being able to run 30 minutes. Then in fifth grade, I ran, a decent amount. We'd have like a few hard workouts a week. It wasn't much. We do a lot, very intense workouts actually when I was in fifth grade. And it was fun because we'd crank 400s really fast. And those were the fun days when I had one of my best training partners. And we'd race the workouts. And then, as I got older, I've realized that, in workouts, you don't need to go all out. Like, I used to go all out because I would be able to recover, and they were lower volume. And I've realized now doing that, I'm not going to be able to recover. And, for the races and the workouts, I can't do as well. So I need to run the actual paces. And yeah, so my dad gave me the workouts, I would say, up until summer of going into sixth grade. Then, if you know Tin Man Elite, right? So their old coach was Tom Schwartz. He's our coach, and he has given us workouts from summer going into sixth grade till like indoor track season this year. So it was really good, and a lot of it is experimenting, right? Because I can see what Jakob Ingebrigtsen does, and it works for him. And I would consider myself a similar runner to him, and I'm an aerobic runner. I'm not a speed based runner, so training for me might work similar to him. But a decent amount of it does come from just experimenting, but looking at what other people have done and other people that are similar to me, right? I'm a 5K, 10K runner, so I need to look at other 5K, 10K runners who don't have a lot of speed. So a lot of it is from other people, but only some of it, a decent amount, is from online. So yeah.
Is it cool growing up in the era where you can know what like Jakob Ingebrigtsen is doing, or you can watch Tin Man Elite videos? Is it cool being in kind of the digital age where, any runner you're interested in, I'm sure you can find some piece or article that shows or tells how they're training?
Yeah, I think it gives me a big advantage, I think, over other people, who lived in the 80s. It's just kind of like word of mouth or anything really before probably 2000. You can't really, there's no letsrun.com or, Runner's World. So I think it gives me a big advantage and helps me to be able to become faster. And I think that's one of the reasons that there's so much depth now is because, you don't just learn these good ideas from your coach. You can look online and you can find thousands and thousands of people who are fast and pro runners. So it's really easy.
Obviously, when people see you or look at your times or hear you talking about how hard you train, I think naturally people would probably think about a Jakob Ingebrigtsen type of person who was training as like he called a professional runner from like the age of like 8 or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
Do you ever take, I would say, comfort in the fact that people like him trained so hard growing up as you yourself have trained so hard? And I feel like that's one of the things that people comment the most is like, you're training way too hard.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think the biggest thing about, you look at him and his training isn't like, I'm going to crank 400s as hard as I can go today. It's like, I'm going to go threshold pace. And that it puts a decent amount of strain on your body when you're, running higher mileage and higher volume workouts. But when you run all out workouts and you do all that, that's where you get injured. That's where you get really sore and you can't recover. So I think the most important thing is you look at the rate of change and you look at the intensity of the workouts. So if you jump from 20 miles a week to 60 miles a week within the span of a year, there's a decent chance you're going to get injured. Now, I've actually never been injured. The closest thing I've been to getting injured is probably I've had to run a few less miles on one day. I almost never miss a workout, and I think the most important thing is that I'm consistent with everything that not everything, but I try to be consistent with everything, and I don't make dumb mistakes that I can avoid at least. And I think, if I go wrestle my friend, which is fun to, mess around and stuff, but that's where I get into trouble is when I become dumb, and that's what I don't do, and that's what a lot of people do. They just dumb mistakes can lead to injury, and I think as a younger athlete, you have to make sure that you're not increasing too quickly. But if you are fine and you're not getting too sore, you can recover well, you're racing well. If you're doing all those things, then the mileage doesn't really matter as long as you're feeling okay. It's not a number thing that applies to everybody. It's a you thing because everybody's different. So
What does a normal week of training look like for you? Like recent day, outdoor season, Sunday through Saturday. Take me through it.
yeah, so I have one long run a week, and we have 2 threshold based days, and then 1 speed day. So the speed days, they can be anything from 800s at 5K pace to 200s at 800 pace. So it changes a lot. It depends on mainly what my next race is. So let's say I'm going to race at 3200, then I want to do 3200 pace. I'll do 600s at 3200 pace. If I have a 10K coming up, I might do 10 800s at 10K pace, and then 10 200s at 800 to mile pace to simulate a kick. So I would say the speed workout is mainly based upon what my next race is to be able to hit the splits and know it helps me build confidence. If, okay, I want to run whatever time in the mile and I just did 8 400s at that pace off a 1 minute rest. Now I have, or 90-second rest. Now I have confidence that I can do that time because I did this workout. So, I base my races kind of off my workouts in the sense of I do similar workouts over a long period of time. So even if the race, let's say, it's really windy or really hot, then I can see, okay, my workouts are improving this much, then my time, once I get a good day, is going to improve by this much. I have 3 easy days a week. So yeah, those are just, 5K pace plus 2 minutes a mile or so. It's pretty easy. I try to hold back a little bit so that I can recover for the next workouts. And if you look at Jakob Ingebrigtsen, he does 3 workout days a week. And I listened to an interview of what he was saying. And there's more risk of injury if you do 2 workout days a week and you go really intense because you put so much strain on your body in those 2 days. But if you spread it out over 3 days a week, then you can reduce risk of injury, get in more volume and more intensity. So it's kind of a win-win scenario doing 3 workout days a week rather than 2. So
what's your weekly mileage look like most weeks?
It depends. I'm not going to get into specifics, but race weeks, it'll be lower. Training weeks are obviously going to be higher. But the most important thing is the quality of the mileage because anybody can go out and run 60 miles a week at 8-minute pace, right? And then you're not going to gain fitness unless that's fast for you. But for me, I'm not going to gain fitness by just doing easy days. The only workouts I gain fitness from are the hard workout days. So I look at more the quality of my mileage rather than the mileage is more important. So I try to go, if you look at the Norwegian training method, I think it's about 30% hard a week. And I think that's generally what I stick to is about 35% hard, but it's threshold. So it's not mile pace for 35% of the mileage. It's threshold for probably 25, 10% might be, or 5% might be 5K, 3K pace, and 5% is miles. So yeah, the most important thing is the quality of your mileage and your workouts, I would say. So, you've probably seen the workouts I've done, 25 400s at 10K pace or, 10 by 1K at just 5 seconds a K slower than 10K pace or 5 by 6 minutes, 6 by 5. It's basically Jakob's workouts for the threshold workouts. And then the speed workouts, obviously race specific. So
One of the funnier comments or yeah, speculations I've seen people go after you for is that you're doping supposedly. I don't know how an eighth grader could possibly dope, but what's your take on this one? Those probably make you laugh.
Yeah, I would say. I mean, doping. I mean, I don't know how I'd obtain the drugs, but I would say the most important thing you look at a doper is how consistent are they. I mean, if I'm consistent, if I'm good for more than a year, if you look at the dopers, they're good for like a short amount of time, and then they fall off because whatever doesn't work anymore. But like the consistent runners, they're never going to be doping. Like Eliud Kipchoge, nobody's going to consider that think he's doping because he's been good for 20 years. A drug test is going to get him at some point if he's doping. So I just think time will tell. The longer you go without getting a positive drug test, and I've never even taken a drug test, but I don't
Nor do
take
you need
drugs.
to as an eighth grader.
No.
I mean, again, people just project things onto you. Like if they're not running as fast as you, they're like, "Oh, this kid
Yeah,
must have something I don't." And what you have that
right.
they don't is just good work ethic.
Yeah, I
Maybe
think
a little bit of genetics. I don't know.
I think the most important thing is consistency. If you're consistent, like I have not taken a day off of running in almost, I would say it's been it's October 7th or 5th of 2021. I've never taken a day off. And that's actually the biggest reason I think I'm not injured is because when you take a day off, the day after you take it, so let's say it's a Sunday, you take a day off, and then Monday, when you run again, you're 3 times more prone to injury. And that's why people get injured because they're like, oh, I had a day off. Now I'm ready for a hard workout. And the answer is you're not because your legs aren't ready to run because you just took a day off and now your body's like, oh, I'm not used to it. So we would have our like a few years ago, like people would take Sundays off, and then Monday they'd come to practice like my legs don't feel good, or they'll work out like, oh, my shins or whatever is hurting, and it's like, oh, you should have run on Sunday, and now you'd feel pretty good today, but you didn't. So then you put yourself at risk of injury.
So you're coming up on 3 straight years of running every single day. You have not missed a single day in almost 3 years.
No, the shortest I've run is probably 2 miles, but that was just because I had like I don't know if it was I think it was food poisoning or something, but I would have done 6 or whatever that day. But yeah, I mean, in general, I mean, I've yeah.
It's crazy. That's crazy. How many of those days do you feel like you've been motivated to get out the door and run versus like no motivation, but you do it anyways?
I would say most of it depends on how I'm feeling. Like if my legs are feeling good, then I want to run. If my legs aren't feeling good, then I don't want to run. And I've seen as the workouts get harder, you want to do it less because you aren't feeling as good as much. But you just have to keep the work ethic. I would say one workout out of I would say for hard workouts, I'd say 1 out of 3 I'm really excited to do. 1 out of 3 I'm like, I'm ready to do this. And 1 out of 3 is like, ooh, I don't really want to do this, but I'm gonna do it. And easy days are kind of like even more I don't want to do it because in my opinion, easy days are like the worst days because I don't get to go fast. And that's why I like that. I like to run fast. So easy days I look at like, they're kind of the worst. Well, actually I don't like the long run days. Those are the worst. But I like the track workout days when you can crank 300s really fast. But I would say like third of workout days, I don't really want to do it. Third of maybe half of easy days, I don't really want to do it. And easy days, I'm usually sore. So, I'm not really feeling too good. So, I would say third to half of the days.
The 15:09 in the 5K, 13 years old, is that a national record or an age group world record? I know the 10K is both.
There's two lists I've seen. I've seen one list in the 5K that has a faster time, and one list that does, and the list that I have gone by, that shows 15. It was previously 15:33. Then I ran 15:32, and then 15:09. But I'm not gonna call it like I don't know if it's a world record. I don't know if it's not because when I went to their website, like the times don't align on one website to another, so it's hard to say like if it's legit. And I couldn't find anything about the runner who did the 5K on the other time, so I was like, I don't know if it's legit. So I'm not quite sure actually, but yeah,
And then the 10K one, are you sure about the 10K one?
yeah.
It's just
On
okay.
both lists it was demolished.
Okay. So the
Previous.
5K, take me through that 5K race, 15:09.
Yeah, so I was actually about 10 minutes before, I was feeling like crap. I didn't want to do it, and I was tired because typically for me, I like racing in the afternoon or night, and running in the morning. I raced at 9:40, which isn't too early, but it was a little early for me. So I was like, ooh, I really don't want to do this. And I told my dad, I'm like, I don't know how it's gonna go. This is gonna go bad. And I mean, I obviously would have liked to be under 15, but it was, I would say, a really good race considering the conditions. I went out. I had a pacer the first mile, which I thought was really helpful because as soon as he stepped off the track, I was like, "Oh, this race just got a second a lap harder, just like that." So the first mile we came through 4:46, which if you think 4:48 is 15 flat pace, so we were a second or 2 seconds in the bank there. Then I came through the 2 mile, I think upper 930s or so. So I had slowed down a little bit, but not too much. And I was just clicking off the laps, just like, okay, I just got to get to the next one, get to the next one, get to the next one. And then finally, as I got to like 4K, I knew I was going to do it. So at least knew I was going to have a chance at 15:10. And then I just cranked the last lap as hard as I could and 15:10. But I didn't have any competition. And I think if I typically am most consistent in cross country. And I think when I just don't think about the time as much, I just have the mile and 2 mile splits, it's easier for me to give it my all. But when I was by myself, it's harder for me. But, you know, I think it was a good race overall in considering that I gave it, 99.5% of my effort. So I think that was really good. And I think the pacing was relatively good. I mean, the first mile was maybe a little quick looking back on it, but I think it was overall a really good race. And then I actually came back and did a 1500 sit and kick. And then later I paced my dad to a 3K PR. So that was a fun day.
That 10K race, you ran 31:17, as you mentioned, a certified, basically, it as an age group world record. What was that race like? And also the endurance. I mean, you've shared a little bit of your training, but I feel like to go from 15:09 to 31:17, most people don't have that endurance to like double
Yeah.
that well, specifically in eighth grade. What's that like?
Yeah, I think the 10K is mainly a training thing. Like most people don't train well. Like they can be 5K, you can get off on natural talent enough to the point where you just got to put in a decent amount of work. But the 10K is a different animal. Like it is not only the training is a lot harder, but the race itself is grueling. And I know you do marathon training, so you probably have a more similar idea to it than someone who runs the mile. But I'll tell you, running a mile race is incredibly easy compared to the 10K. Like a mile is pain for 4 minutes and whatever 30 some seconds for me at least. But the 10K is like, okay, you feel decent the first 5K, and then the last 10 laps are like the most excruciating pain of your life. I mean, it's extremely hard, and it's the reason why I like the 10K is I find it easy just to pick a pace and I can just run it, and I can just run it for 30 minutes, and I just click off the laps. And I came through the 5K. I was aiming to run 30:50 because that was the 14-year-old record, and you can break the record. So if you're 13, you can break a 14-year-old record because you're under the age, so it counts. So I was like, that's 74 seconds per lap, and 31:15 is 75. So I came through the 5K in 15:24. So I was, if you think about it, you double that's a 30:48. So I was right on pace, but I was slowing down. And by the time I got to 6K, then I started. That was the last split. I think that I was on pace for 30:50, and then I just died. And I think the main thing was it was windy, and I had gone out maybe a little bit too hard. And in the 10K, it's like, oh, you go out maybe 5 seconds hard the first mile, but that 5 seconds kills you. Like you can't not pace a 10K right. Otherwise, it's gonna be painful.
Right. That's why they have the pacing lights and like for the big
Yeah,
10Ks. And it's so important they
yeah.
don't go ahead of them. I do want to hear, like, of course, the record, you knew about it ahead of time. What was it like to ultimately break it? What were the feelings, emotions? Did it feel pretty cool to have an age group world record?
Yeah, I thought it was really cool because there was, I had run 31:19 in a time trial with the pacer the whole way. So, I mean, if you have no pacer, I mean, typically they say a second a lap for that. But I mean, I knew I was in shape to run, like, I think 30:50 was realistic. I ended up at 31:17, but I think the goal I had was good. And I think knowing about it ahead of time obviously helps. And it was at a meet this time, not a time trial. So it was exciting. Like there was a crowd, they were cheering. There was an announcer like, saying, "Oh, he has 2 laps to go. He's on pace, or he's on pace for the record, and let's see what he can do." And it gets you excited when it's just you out there and there's a guy in front of you, and my dad's calling out splits. It's like not as motivating, but it's exciting when you got people cheering for you, and it's actually in a race, not just like at your local track with 2 people there, 3 people there.
Let's talk about your future ambitions. You mentioned to me, even in regards to your social media, like one day want to make a living off of this. What are some things you want to accomplish in the sport? Obviously, you're so young, but this is the type of thing they might play on NBC one day, when you're an Olympian. So what are some things you want to accomplish in the
Oh yeah.
sport?
Yeah, so I would like to eventually break the high school record in the 10K. That is, I think, a very realistic goal. And I think if you look at my progression in the last few years, I'll just go over it really quick. In 2021, I ran, or 2020, I ran 20:56 in the road 5K. 2021, I ran 18:10, I believe. 2022, I didn't actually run this time, but I think it's pretty safe to say because my dad ran 16:40 on the track, and we were like dead even pretty much in workouts. Like we were very close. So I would guess around a 16:40. Recently, I mean, just 15:09. So I've improved very steadily over a long period of time, and my 10K has improved about two 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes in the last 7-8 months. So I mean, I'm improving rapidly. So I think 28:32 is the record. So that's something I'd like to do. I'd like to obviously make it to the Olympic trials. I think it's 27:45, 27:50 is the standard, but you can get in with a B time of anything 28:50 and below. If other people don't make it. But yeah, definitely Olympic trials and Olympics would be cool and ideal. But obviously, it's very hard because it comes every 4 years. You got to show up on the day, run your best in the heat. Hayward Field's always going to be hot in the summer, and the 10K or the 5K is always going to be affected by the heat. So you got to do a lot of things right. You have to show up on the day. You have to hope that other people don't you know do better and just randomly just get better because it's the championship race, and then you have to have a good tactic because they're typically always tactical races. So you need to have a good tactic for yourself that's going to get you at least top three. And you got to run the standard. So it's really, I think, hard to make it to the Olympics. Like if you just had to do the standard, it's I'm not saying it's easy, but it's definitely not like nearly as hard as it is if you have three people making it instead of like whatever 10 people probably in the US could make it.
Of course, I'm sure you're like thinking about the Olympics and stuff, but as a middle schooler, like I'm sure you think about making it to the NCAA, like dream collegiate schools. You're not even in high school yet, though. How do you break down like those goals where you have these big goals and ambitions, but you are so young? How do you try to stay in the present moment with all that you probably can accomplish one day?
Right. So I think the most important thing for me is I set goals for every time period. So it's like, okay, we have a goal. What's the next race going to be? Or first of all, what's like the next thing I'm going to do to get better? Like, okay, we have a workout. We have to stretch. We have to eat right. We have to sleep right. That's like the very immediate goal. The next thing is like, what's the next race you have? What do you want to run? What do you want to do to run as well as you can? Then the next thing is like a season goal. So, let's say you want to break 15 minutes in the 5K or 4:30 in the mile or whatever it is. You have a season goal, and then you have a year goal, and then you have, every year, and then it just goes and goes and goes until you can't think of goals to make up for yourself. So I just set like, very short term, short, medium, long term goals, and then you just eventually get them or you don't get them. So,
Talking about the rest of your middle school career, what are some things you want to accomplish before this season is up and you venture into the depths of high school running?
yeah, so I'd like to break my school record in the 3200, which is 9:22. I've run 9:32, but I definitely know I can go a lot faster based off of my 10K and just my workouts in general. Like I know I usually have a pretty good idea of what I can run based off my workouts, but the important thing is you have perfect conditions because that is very hard to get, and you get it a few times maybe a season. So when you get perfect conditions, you need to nail it because those are rare times that you're going to get. So I'd like to break my school record in the 3200. I'd like to definitely get under 4:30 in the 1600 and do well at state this year for high school. Ideally top three for Minnesota. And it is Class A, so it's probably not as impressive. Triple A, you have people running like under 9 minutes, which is not even, I mean, it's pretty common now, but for Minnesota, I mean, we're not super fast here. So, like in general, but yeah, I'd like to do that. And then as we go into the summer, I'm debating on whether I'm gonna do Nike Outdoor, and I'd like to do the Rising Stars 2 mile, which is 9:30 in the 3200. I need to get, and I think I have a decent chance at qualifying in the 5K for the championship. I need to get a 9:21. So if I break the school record, I'll automatically get those two. So I think it's very realistic, but I just have to go out there and do it now. And then in the summer, I might do some like national track meets in the 15 and 3K, but I might just focus on cross country, seeing that like this season's going to be, I think, really good for this cross country season. So,
Erik, really appreciate the conversation, all the insights you've shared. One final question
yeah.
for the question I ask every single guest on every single episode. You probably heard it a bunch. If you had Gordon Ramsay coming over to your house for dinner, what would you choose to make for him?
Ooh, I'd probably say spaghetti with breadsticks.
Ooh.
My favorite, I would say my favorite meal. Just like spaghetti with red sauce, breadsticks, and chicken. Like chicken breast. So
Erik, really appreciate the conversation. Thanks for hopping on. Doing this at such a young age was so fun. Looking forward to looking back on this one day. And also, I'll just say this straight up. You are way more articulate than a lot of my high school guests and even college guests. So shout out to your parents or whoever has taught you to talk so well and openly.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate the conversation. And yeah, keep crushing, man. Keep breaking the records.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on.